Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Kiddushin daf Mem Daled. We're going to begin on Mem Gimel Medbeis, the second line from the bottom, Vahari Maimer. So we were learning based on a Mishnah in Gittin regarding a Nar Hamarasa. The din is that, according to the Tanakama, either she, this girl who again has only had Kiddushin, not Nisuin, and is only the stage of a Naira, either she or her father can be makabel to get. Now, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, says no, it's not true. Only the father has that right. Now, Rish Lakish says that just like there's a machlokas by Gittin over there, so too when it comes to who can be makabel if she's a naira hamarasa, a naira, the Kiddushin money. Is it only the father, or is it that she can also accept it? Rabbi Yochanan says no. The whole machlokes is only over there. When it comes to Kiddushin, the din is that everyone holds Divrei Kol Aviv Elohi, that only the father and not her. So he said, why? Why does he say that? He says because there's a fundamental difference between Gerushin and Kiddushin. Because when it comes to Gerushin, what's happening is that she's leaving. She's going into the father's rishus. And since she's going into the father's rishus, so either her or the father can accept it. However, when it comes to Kiddushin, where she's actually leaving the father's rishus, so since she's leaving the father's rishus, right now the father has some element of control because she's now in his house. So the fact is that for her to leave the house, he gets it only. So he says, well, of course, that logic, anything like Kiddushin, we should say that only the father can be makabel it. Vahari Maimer, when it comes to the din of Maimer, and Rashi helps me out over here, which we've learned already in Yavamas, Kedusha Yavam, when it comes to the Kiddushin of a Yavam, be a Vimtai, Kuri Maimer. So that Kiddushin, so normally, as we saw at the very beginning of Masechta, it's through Bia, but that's a complete act of now she is considered to be married to the Yavam. Here we're talking about, it's like a din Kiddushin. Midrabanan is a din Maimer. If you give Kiddushin Kesef to the Yavama, to the Shemer Shavam, the din is that she does have a connection to that person. She is not able to anymore be able to do Yibum with the brothers. Okay. Now, when it comes to Maimer, the Mafkas Atzma Rishos Aviyah, it's similar to the din of Kiddushin, because she's leaving the father's rishus, Tanan, yet we learn, as we continue Mem Dal with Aleph, Katana, if she's only a Katana, and she's a Shomer Shavam, Min Erison, and only Erison took place, which means she's still considered in the rishus of the father, because she never left, because it was only Erison, in Oitzim B'Maimer El Madas Aviyah. In that case, you need the father's consent. However, here's the question. V'hanaira ben medas atzma ben medas aviyah. When it comes to a naira hamarasa, we see beferish that Maimer can be done even with just her consent, even without the father's consent. Says Rashi, Al mehecha demafkas atzma rishus av. Even when she leaves the father's rishus, we see the Kaminam Rabbanan bil Musayu, that they stick to what they said, which sounds actually very much like the Shita of Reish Lakish. So how could Rav Yochanan say that when it comes to Kiddushin, it's different because she's leaving the father's rishus? By Maimer, she's also leaving the father's rishus because we're talking about Erison. So Mashin with Kiddushin. Ella Ietmar Hachimar. This is how you're supposed to read it. My time Rav Yochanan. So what is the reason that Rav Yochanan says his din to be mechalek between Gittin and Kiddushin? Because Kiddushin, the Medaita, since Kiddushin has to be with consent, has to be with accepting this man to marry, so Aviv Elohi. So then the father is involved, not her. Gerushin de Bal Karcha. This is very clear and clean. When it comes to Gerushin, it's against that person's will. So therefore, if the husband wants to give the get, it doesn't make any difference. Therefore, ben he ben aviyah. So when it comes to get, because it's Balkarcha, that's the reason why both people can accept it. Mashin came by Kiddushin. Vahari Maimer de Bedaita, but Maimer, which is again similar to Kiddushin, but it's with the Yavama, so it also has to be done with consent, and nonetheless, we say V'katani ben hi ben aviyah. So you have the same question. So it's not true. Maimer is not done Balkarcha, right? Gemara says, well, Hasam ba Maimer de Balkarcha, Rabbi. Actually, it's not so clear. That it's possible that in a situation where, if let's say the man, the brother of the deceased, her deceased husband, he threw money and said Hariyat Mukadeshesli, whether that works because there's a zika, it's not really the same thing as Kiddushin, and therefore Hasan b'mayim b'mal karcha b'Rebbe he did not. Ha'isa mayim Rabbi Avim tai shlomadaita. If let's say you did it without her consent, it was done by karcha. Rabbi Omer kana, v'cham Omer lo kana. So if you hold like Rebbe, actually you can say it actually is similar to Gittin, because just like Gittin is Bal Karcha, and therefore it's Bein Hi Ben Aviyah, that's the reason why by Maimer it's also Bein Hi Ben Aviyah, because they're both like that, but it's actually a machlok. So my time to Rebbe, why does Rebbe actually say that it can be done even Shalom Adaita? So Gomer Mabiyah Diyavama. It's learned out from the Bia of a Yavama. Ma Bia Diyavama Bal Karcha, of Hachanami Bal Karcha. So he links this Zika, so the Yavam has a right to be kind to her with Bia, and even if that's not necessarily what she would prefer. Obviously doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that she would be forced physically to have tashmish. There's a din chalitza, but the idea is that if a kinyan would take place, even if she did not want that kinyan to take place, it would still be kind of through that kinyan would take place with bia. That's how I like to understand that. Since you're talking about kinyanim of ways of marrying Yavama, so we link them together. And therefore, just like bia is Bal Karcha, so too Maimer. He actually thinks it makes more sense. Maimer is not really comparable to Gittin. Maimer is comparable to, or it's not comparable to Bia Yavama. It's talking about Medaita, just like Kiddushin. So my Kamifli, Rabbi Savar, Miladi Yavama, Yavama Havi Lamelov. It makes more sense to compare Yavama issues. Rabban Savar, Kiddushin, Havi Lamelov. So we say this is also logical, says Rashi, that the father and the daughter also has a right, but Maimar Karchakoi, it's only because it's by force. That's the reason why. Has Rabbi Yochanan answers. Made a tiny seifa. It says in the seifa, Mash'ain Kain B'Kiddushin. That's the reason why, if you see in the Gemara, that is part of it, but wasn't part of the questions. That's what's put in parentheses. But that really is part of this this long statement. Now it says Mashen Kain B'Kiddushin. Why does it say Mashen Kain B'Kiddushin? Which is Madas, so only the Av. That's what it says. That when it comes to Maimer, it can be Naira Bein Medas Atzmei Medas Aviyah. Mashen Kain B'Kiddushin, because it's saying that according to this svara actually supporting Maimer is not like Kiddushin. And since Maimer is not like Kiddushin, so therefore that shows that Maimer is something which could be done Bal Karcha, and therefore that's the reason why Maimer is Bain the father or her. So that's the thing. So Elanim and have to do Reish Lakish. And all of a sudden that's a clear stira, a contradiction of Reish Lakish, who says that all the dinim are the same by Kiddushin, Gerushin. We see that's not the case. The Gemara says Beferish Mashain came by Kiddushin. It's not the same. So Reish Lakish, Hamani Rabbi Yehuda. You're right, but I don't have to be in support of everyone. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar Ein Shnei Yadayim Zaychas Kachas. Rabbi Yehuda just Pashut says that you can't have two people having the ability to do the same thing. So Rabbi Yehuda, Mashen Kain B'Kiddushin, Mashen Kain B'Gerushin M'Boile. It really should say Mashen Kain B'Gerushin, because the Mishnah in Gittin is talking about Nar Marasa, whether she be Makabel to get. Rabbi Yehuda says Ein Shnei Yadayim Zaychas Kachad. That's specifically referring to, or that's talking about Gerushin. So why does it say Mashen Kain B'Kedushin? It should say Mashen Kain B'Gerushin, Erachinami. Added the Tani Maimer, the Dalma Kedushin, Tananami Mashen Kain B'Kedushin. Since it's talking about Maimer, so therefore it said Mashen Kain B'Kedushin. But the truth is that the Machlokes, according to Rish Lakish, is not just by Gerushin, it's also by Kedushin. The reality is it may have made the more sense on a language perspective to have mentioned Mashen Kain B'Gerushin, but nonetheless, because we mentioned Maimer, which is comparable to Kedushin, so therefore we mentioned that one. Rabbi Yehuda Maishna Maimer. So why, when it comes to Rabbi Yehuda, does he make a distinction? That he agrees that even she can do Maimer without the father. So the answer is Hoyel Zekukav Medes, because since she's Zekukav Medes, by Maimer it's different. You can't compare Maimer to anything else. The reason why even Rabbi Yehuda will hold, even though you say that you can't have two people Zeichas Ka'achas, however, when it comes to Maimer, the din is that it can be done, a Naira is Bain Medas Atz Medas Aviyah. He agrees to that. But it's because Maimer is not a total kinyan from someone who's a Penuya. She's already Zokuk. She was already connected to you. So since she's already connected to you, this is not such unbelievable kinyan, if you will. So therefore, anyone can do it. So Hashdi Asal Hachi, once you answer that, you can say the same question, can instantly be answered. That you can't ask Kasha by Maimer. So what? By Maimer, the din is that both people can do it, right? That even though by Maimer she's leaving the father's rishos, okay, but it's more than that because she's a kukava medes. Mashen Kain, when it comes to Kiddushin, in which she is also leaving the father's rishos, it's true, but in that situation, according to the opinion of Rav Yochanan, he'll say no. When it comes to Kiddushin, only the father can get it. Only the father can do this. Even though Maimer sounds like Kiddushin, but Maimer is Zekukav Medes. Okay. Question 1. By Maimer, that again it's Bein Medas Atz Medas Aviyah, and the reason is, as we said, Zekukav Medes. He says over Taima Hoyel Zekukav Medes Toifus B'Kol Dehu. Even the smallest tfisa, which means even she is able to do it. Okay. Tanat. Ha'ish Mekadosh is Bito Kishi Naira, Bo V'Shlucho. Sounds familiar, right? That was our Mishnah. So a man can be Mekadosh a woman, either he could do it or he can appoint a Shliach to do it. Now, the fact that it says this, Ha'ish Mekadosh is Bito Kishi Naira, this is actually referring to the father, rather. So this is, again, the father can be Mekadesh's daughter while she's a Naira. Ha'ish Mekadesh's Bito Kishi Naira, Bo V'Shlucho. Bo V'Shlucho in Bo V'Shlucha, whoa. It's mashma only he can do it, but not her. So it's Tivta Rish Lakish. It seems pretty clear that a Naira, who has a father, cannot be Mekadesh herself. It's very clear. So I'm Rish Lakish, no Hamadi Rabbi Yehuda. It's again, we can say that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda again says that you can't have two people to do the same thing, build with the same ability to do the same thing. So only the father can. How can you possibly establish like Rabbi Yehuda? We're going to see in the Sefer, which is not the previous, but the Sefer of a Mishnah we're going to see soon on Daf Mem Vav. A person says, I want you to marry me with this date. Hiskachli bezu, marry me with this. V'amrinan mantana hiskachi. So the fact is that he kept saying hiskachi, he said it twice. By you saying it, it splits the language. V'yarmer Rabba Rav Shimoni. We end up saying that this is the shita of Rav Shimon. De'aymer ad sheyarmer shvul chol echad ve'echad. So look at Rashi. Gabi chamisha tayvin isai. There are 5 claimants. Give me the pikadain which is in your hands, says Rashi. I swear to you, I do not have your object, which ends up being a lie. But he says, It's just that really includes everyone. You're only going to be chayav for one. You have to say a shvua. I don't have yours. A shvua, I don't have yours. Shvua, I don't have yours. So that is the shita of Rav Shimon. So it says Rav Shimon. So this sounds therefore like the Reisha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. It's like Rav Shimon. No, maybe really the Reisha is also, again, still like Rabbi Yehuda, so it's not a kasha on Reish Lakish. Ubeprati several Rav Shimon. When it comes to the dinim of whether you include it as one statement or as multiple statements to be chayiv, when it comes to the din of Shavuos Bikadoin, maybe Yehuda holds like Rav Shimon. That's all. So okay, fine. So one name is Rav Shimon, the other one's Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda agrees to Rav Shimon over there. Mi savar law. Is it possible to say that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rav Shimon? V'sanya zekal. This is the general rule. Klal enu chayv el achas. If you include one long statement and it's all coupled and put together, you're only going to be chayiv once. Again, when it comes to Shavuos, prat, if you specify chayav el kol achas v'achas, dibra meir. So it's a basic idea. Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to see Rabbi Yehuda says something and Rabbi Shimon says something, which obviously means Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon disagree, which means the seifa is not Rav Yehuda, the seifa is Rav Shimon, and therefore it must be that the Reisha is not Rabbi Yehuda. That's going to be the question. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shvuah lo l'cha chayav al kol achas v'achas. Even though you over here you're chayav each one because you didn't add the vav. You add the vav, that would kind of include them all. Blazer Omer lo l'cha v'lo l'cha shvuah chayav al kol achas v'achas. And then Rav Shimon Omer, as we said before, lo Omer chayav ad she'emer shvuah l'cha l'cha v'achas. So that's the question. So we see clearly that the Seifa is not like, the Reisha cannot be like Rabbi Yehuda, because the Seifa mentions Rav Shimon's name, and Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Shimon disagree. So probably the Reisha of our Mishnah on Mem Aleph is not Rabbi Yehuda. So okay, fine. So Rabbi Yehuda we can't say the Reisha is Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda agrees to Rav Shimon and the Seifa, so flip it. Elakul Rav Shimon why don't you say V'shluchos Savar Rabbi Yehuda? And that's in fact what we're going to say. That really, right, the Seifa is Rav Shimon, and the Reisha is like Rav Shimon, is Rabbi Yehuda. And Rav Shimon holds like Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to din of shlichus. When it comes to shlichus, the Mishnah says that only the father can do it and not her. Okay. Rav Asi loy alabe midrasha. So Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Asi, for whatever reason, doesn't say right now why, but he didn't go to the base medrash. Ashachei or Rav Zera, so they encountered Rav Asi and Rav Zera together. Armalei asked, Ma Omer ha'inna be midrasha. Since Rav Asi wasn't there, Rav Zera was. He said, so no, what did you guys talk about? So Amalei afanalo ayil. To be honest, I wasn't there either. Rav Oven who the ayil, however, Rav Oven was there. V'omer chavrusa kulak Rav Yochanan. They said that everyone holds that the din is like the shita of Rav Yochanan. Who's Rav Yochanan? As we just said before, this was the whole dispute. Rav Yochanan said that the whole machlokus is only by gerushin between Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda. However, by Kiddushin, everyone holds divrei kol aviyah, that only the father can be makabel the Kiddushin. That's what Rav Yochanan said. V'savach Reish Lakish disagreed. Ki kruchia, like a bird, v'yatza v'haisel, v'yatza v'haisa. And as we always compare Kiddushin and Gittin, Gittin, Kiddushin, we see this so many times in this Masechta. No one paid any attention to him. Doesn't mean they ignored him, but they felt that wasn't the din. And therefore, even though it's true, maybe normally we do compare the two, in this situation they're different. The dinim are different. So therefore, when it comes to Kiddushin, as we said, why Kiddushin? Because it's done Medaita, so therefore only the father can do it. Gerushin, which is about Karcha, so therefore even the girl can be Makabal. Again, according to the Tanakh. Amar Rav Avin Bar Samcha who? One second. You said Rav Avin was there, but is he a Bar Samcha? Can we really rely on this? This is serious pshat. He said that everyone holds like Rabbi Yochanan. I'm like, yeah, you could. Kimin Yama Litigni who? He's just like a sea to a frying pan. Like if you would take a fish, says Rashi, lo haisa lo shois, shichem in time. There was no time for him to forget. Kishiyatzim by base medrash. Once he left the base medrash, Armalimiyad, he told him this immediately. Kishayla dag minayam. As soon as you catch a fish, you throw it onto a frying pan. There wasn't even a moment in between. So it must be he said it correctly. Rav Nachman Rav Oven Rav Chia Rav Oven Bar Kahana El Rav Oven Stam. When I said it's Rav Oven, that's it. That's who it was. So why nafkamina? Why have to be so particular? If we're going to ask contradictions somewhere else in Shas, we need to know the exact person who said this. Okay. Maybe go Oilam. Okay. Bamine Ravim Rav Nachman. Okay, let's hold off 1 second. Let's see if there's a question. Question TA11. Okay, good. This actually could have said was in yesterday's daf, but not really. So, Madul Rav Yochanan the Kiddushin Naira Kuliyama Moedish Yavim Makabel. Why only the father when it comes to Kiddushin? So he said one shot is this actually is on the previous daf. Kiddushin the Mafkas Atzim Rishos Avia Via Velohi. So that's one possible answer, even though we ended up saying, well, how about by Maimer? So again, Maimer is the Sukkot of Ameda, so that actually does remain a solid answer. Or alternatively, the difference has to do with, when it comes to Kiddushin, the Medaita, since Kiddushin is with consent, Avia Velohi, but Gershon is the Balkarcha, bin he bin Avia. So says TA11. Again, the question is, why, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Kiddushin Nara l'kolyam amoidish yavia mekabel v'lo hi af shebegersh l'Rabbanan gam hi yichol l'kabel. Okay, let's see if TB Masvar Rabbi Yochanan the Rabbanan l'chal ben Gershon the lav hi v'lovia ben Kiddushin avia v'lo hi. Sounds like the exact same question. So we'll just put this here. This is TB12. Gershon Machnesses Atzimur Shosavia, Gershon Balkarcha. Okay, that was TB12. So it's mamish the same question as TA11, which sometimes we will end up seeing. Questions are duplicated. All right. Okay, let's continue now with the 2 dots on the very bottom of Mem Dalet Manal. Ba'amine Ravim Rav Nachman. So the question was posed as we continue to Mem Dalet Amud Beis. Naira, when it comes to this girl, who's a Naira, 12 and 12 and a half, so it's Rabbanan. The Rabbanan, the Amri Mekabel Sitzkita. So again, according to that Mishnah in Gittin, there was a Machukas. Rabbi Yehuda says that only the father can be Mekabel. But according to the Rabbanan, she can also be Mekabel her get. So Ma'ash Shitasa Shlecha Kabagita. Miyad Balot. Since she could be makabel to get herself, can she also appoint a shliach? Kiyada v'yadamia kechatzer v'yadamia. Is she like the hand of her father or like the courtyard? Kiyada v'yadamia ma'avia mishavi shliachav. Hinami mishavi shliach. Maybe she's like her father's hand. Her father can make a shliach, so she can make a shliach. Odama kechatzer v'ya, like a dami, like a courtyard. V'yadamati gitli yoda lo megarsha. Actually has to get into her hands. Let's look at question 2. Nairul Rabbanan the Mekabelas Gita Ha'im hi kiyadavia o kechatzaravia u'ma hochrach lazeh. So that's question 2, which is this right now. Can she, according to the sheet of the Rabbanan, make a shliach as a naira? Where it says umi misafgale l'Rava. Does Rava really have this suffix? Bomini Rava Rav Nachman. Well, Rava, you have such a kasha. Why are you so masupik? Why are you unsure? After all, Rava, you said yourself, kasev get, you wrote a get, the nasno biad avda, you give it to your eved, and he's yashin, he's sleeping, so he doesn't know what's going on, but he's like a chutzner, umishmarto, and you're watching him, how is a get? In that situation, it's considered to be a get, because it's like a chutzner hamishtameris, Ladaita with your content. Neor, well, let's say the Eved is awake, then in that situation, Eno get. That's considered to be now a Chatzar Mishmeres according to Ladas Eved Atzmai. Neor Mayenu get, so this is more actually says this. So why, if the Eved is awake, it doesn't work? He's still getting it the same way. Because it's someone else's das. And a chutzner has to be like an inanimate object. So if he's sleeping, it's considered keel like a chutzner. But if he's awake, it's not like a chutzner. If you want to tell me that she is like a chutzner aviyah, you can say the same thing unless you want to tell me that she was asleep. The Gemara doesn't seem to imply that is the only situation. So it must be that we're saying that she can be makabel to get. How could she be makabel to get if it's because of a chutzner? So we know when it comes to a chutzner, if the Eved is awake, or in this case, maybe if she would be awake, which is what we're talking about, that it would not be a good get. The fact that it is a get must be it's not because she's considered like a chutzner, rather she's considered to be like yad aviyah, so she should be able to make a shliach. El oilam shita leidchi yad aviyah damya. So actually we can derive from here, which is again the answer to question 2, kiyad aviyah v'lo kechatzer. Dahavi la chatzer hamishmer shlo das aviha. So again, that's the answer. So that's not a question. Rabbi couldn't have asked that question because he would have been able to derive, certainly, she would be able to appoint a shliach. This was his actual question. Mi alima kiyadaviyah. Is it so strong l'shavi shliach that she can actually appoint a shliach? Olo. So even though we say that she's considered yad aviyah, that doesn't mean that it's so strong that she could even make a shliach. Esvei, which seems counterintuitive, but that's what the Gemara says. So Esvei, katana she'amra hiskabli giti. If let's say you have a katana who has no halachic das, if she says that I want you to be makabel my get, enu get, ad she get liyada, actually go into her hands. Hanar har is a get. Now it's mashma, it's only because it's a katana. Mashma, a nara could say such a thing, which is mashma, maybe she could appoint a shliach. So we're talking about a situation where the girl has no father, and the girl has no father, so therefore she's like Yesaima, and therefore she has the ability to be makabel her get, because there's no father to be makabel it. So Hamanetani Seva, Im Amr Aviha, but it says in the Seva, if my father says, Seva Kabel get libiti, go and be makabel to get to my daughter, Imratzabal Lachser boy Yasser, the husband cannot retract. So Machadareshna to be Yeshla Avaskin, whatever the case is over there, doesn't matter so much as we see clearly she does have a father. So how can you tell me the Reish is telling me she doesn't have a father? The answer is it's possible. It's just There's words missing. This is how you're supposed to read it. Katana Amra, when we're dealing with this girl who's a katana, she's under 12, and she says Hiskabli Gita Enu get. As she get Liada. Because the get has to go into her hands because she has to go into her hands. She cannot make a shliach. She's a katana. Her naira has a get. However, maybe when she's a naira, Shitaka could make this decoration because she could make a shliach. But b'medivar amurim, maybe the only time a naira can do this is only because she has av, only because she has no father. But if the father, there is a father, and the father says, I want you to be makabel this get, right? So in that case, he can no longer retract. So again, it's possible it's not a raya really either way, but we're saying that maybe we're talking about a case dafka where she does not have a father. That's why she can appoint a shliach. But if she in fact would have a father, maybe even though we say that she's considered to be like yad aviyah, but nonetheless, maybe her hand is not. It's not so strong that she can still also be makabel to make a shliach. Itmar, katana. So we learn like this: a katana shniskansha shlo das aviyah. Says Rashi. You have a katana who is makadish without her father's consent. Now, lo amr lo aviyah lakabel. The father did not say to be makabel to get. Vo yada. Katana hakol moedim. We're going to see when it comes to a katana, everyone agrees. Shen Kiddushin shalom adaitai. She can't be makadish. She cannot be makabel Kiddushin without her father's consent. So if you have a case of katana sheskash shalom dasavia, it's nothing. They're not married. So on this, we have the following opinion of Shmuel. Omer Shmuel, sricha get. We still require a get. Usricha miyun, and she also has to do miyun. Now, what does that mean? Get means that actually somehow she is married. Miyun means that she walks out of the relationship. Now you can only do. Why would you be able to do miyun? is obviously, again, it shows that they're married. So Amar Karna Devar Megoy. These statements seem to be somewhat of a contradiction. Klaim says Rashi Yesh Tshuva the Tema de Bishmol. It's hard to understand. Im get, why do you need both? If you give a get, so that means she's married, and that's the strongest thing to divorce her with is with a get. So Lama Mian, why does she need to walk out of the marriage? A katana has that authorization when it comes to Kiddushin Maimer. She has no father, that she can leave the marriage. That's allowed. She's allowed to walk out of it. But then that's mashma. You don't need a get. Imian Lama get. You shouldn't need both. So Amrulay Hamar Ukva Ubeidina de Bekafri. So according to them in this basin, Afchuha, they sent this message that that he said this cryptic statement, and Shmuel said Devar Begoy. Avchua, flip that around. In other words, really the other way around. It was, as Rashi says, B'Shem Karna, in the name of Karna, and when it said over here, Devar Begoy, Omer Karna, right? It was Karna said Devar Begoy. Actually, flip it around. They said that Karna said the cryptic statement, and that Shmuel's the one who said the Devar Begoy. Okay, who's the one who said what? We still have to understand it. You need both. Person should have compassion on Abba or Abba. Rashi says Abu de Shmuel Havi. The name of Hachi should say such a thing. The time of my so why again? We're talking about a katana. She was a makabel Kiddushin without her father's consent. So why would you need a get? Why would you need a get at all? So sricha get shemin nisratza abi Kiddushin. The father didn't say he does not want it. He didn't say anything. So what happens if the father actually did want this Kiddushin? So if he did want the Kiddushin, then maybe it is chal. That's why you have to give a get. Maybe. On the other hand, maybe the father did not want the Kiddushin, and therefore they were not really married. So then, if that's the case, why do you need Mian? The Yomru, people say, in Kiddushin Tyson B'chaisa. That Kiddushin is not Toivus by a sister, says Rashi. Haroya, someone who sees, Hatznuha get, the fact that she actually needed a get, and therefore she was actually married, Savar, they'll think, that the father actually wanted her to be married, and that's why you needed a get. The Havile Gurushaso Malia, and she's mamish divorced. It was a real divorce. Veshuvin Kiddushin Tyson Lo B'chaisa, and therefore the Kiddushin will not be typhus to her sister. If let's say Sha'achos Gurushaso Bikaris. So as long as the sisters are alive, if a man marries this katana, again without the father's consent, once you give him get, so people are going to say, okay, and then this guy turns around and tries to do Kiddushin with her older sister, we're going to say, oh, it's not a Kiddushin, obviously, because he was legitimately married to this girl, this katana. How do I know? He gave a get. It must be they were married, right? So the problem is not this katana, is what if this man marries subsequently her sister, and people are going to say, oh, she can't, it's not a Kiddushin, and therefore you don't need a get for the second girl. And therefore we need Miyun to say, well, 1 second. Miyun means that they maybe weren't married. So therefore now that he decided to do Kiddushin on the second one, he has to give her a get too. Amar Rav Nachman, V'hu sheshidchai. It's only a situation if we're dealing with a shidduch. Says Rashi, Hadyar Masricha get, the only time we require a get for the katana is kashidach ba, u'avia kadem ger Kiddushin. There had to have been some possible belief that the father actually wanted this marriage to take place, even though it wasn't done with his consent. But if at least there was a shidduch, so maybe, says Rashi, the ikah was spooky shemnis ratza. Maybe the father actually wanted it, kishishama v'havil Kiddushin l'mafreya, so that actually does work. And that's the reason why you need to get. If there was no shidduch, the father had no clue about this, so then in that situation you don't need to get at all. I feel miyun in a sricha. So Ula says, even miyun you don't need. So I've got the shidduch. 1 second. If there's a shidduch, you tell me you don't need even miyun, you don't need nothing. Uman de masniha, lo masniha. One who learns this doesn't learn this. Says Rashi. What does that mean? Man de masni plugta de ula de Shmuel lo masni ad Shmuel hai pirusha. The parsha Rav Nachman v'husha shidchu. Okay. So, again, even mian you don't need is not talking about a case of a shidduch. If it's a case of a shidduch, then you would need. Okay. Some say the Omer Ula Katanish is Skachel, as we've been talking about this case, where we said that she needs Kiddushin, and she needs a get and Miyun. A fil Miyun eno sricha. You don't need anything. You don't need even Miyun. Because again, it was done without the father's consent. Masav Rav Kahana. The Kulon, in all of these cases, goes back all the way to the beginning of the Masechtas Yevamos. When it comes to a person of the Tesvav Arayos, there's 15 arayos in which we say, if, let's say again, you have a man, you're married to a man and he dies childless. So normally you have to do yibum. Now what happens if, let's say, this man actually had two wives, you, and also someone who his brother is an ereva. So he can't do yibum with your co-wife, with the tzara, so you also are going to be potter as well. And it's sorry sehen, as Rashi says, poiter sorry sehen, v'sara sorry sehen, minachlitzu minayibum. You're potter from everything, right? So that's that case over there. So v'kuan in all those cases, imesu. If let's say this ereva died, and here's the key line over here, o mi'anu, or let's say miyun was done, o nisgarshu, they were divorced, o shenimsu islandus. One of them she was found out to be an islandess, which means it was not really a Kiddushin. Sarasein mutaros. So the Sarah is mutter. So the Sarasein are mutter. Okay. Now, the Gemara asks a question. What exactly is this talking about? The Kitchaman. Who exactly got married? Ilav the Kitchu was it the father that was Mekadesh this girl? B'miyan Sagila. Get Malia boy. It mentions in all these cases, we're going to have to understand this case better, it mentions mian. Mian is only in a situation where either there's no father, it's either the older brother, or the mother marries her off, so she can walk away with mian. However, when the father does the Kiddushin, that's a Kiddushin d'oraisa, can't walk away, so this cannot be a situation where there's a father. Right, where the father's makabel. Elulav the kitcheihi nafsha. Must be that she was makabel the Kiddushin herself. That's why there's a case of miyun, because the father didn't do it. The katani the boy miyun. So we see clearly when it comes to the case of katana that miyun is required. So how could you tell me that this case of a katana who's makabel Kiddushin without the father's consent, I feel miyan will sricha? We see over in this case, what if miyan was done? Why do you have to do miyan? Obviously, we're talking about a case where the father didn't do it. The father's one did the Kiddushin, then miyan wouldn't apply. That miyan doesn't work. So the only time you can do miyan is if she's makabel. So we see that she could do it. So who moisabel he can answer it. Even though the father's alive, that she became a masi yisaima. It's like she became a Yisaima in the father's lifetime. Says Rashi. Okay, so Maisi Yisaima Machayav says Rashi. Keep going. So what happened was the father had her married to someone else. Let's keep it simple. She got divorced already as a katana. So the father married her off as a katana, and that man divorced her. At that point, says Rashi, Sharhi b'chayavia ki yisaima. Halachically, she's considered like a yisaima. Now, she still has a father, a very healthy, nice father, but halachically, the father doesn't have the same rights. To Givan Shasiya, once the father married her off the first time, he doesn't have any rishus anymore. She was married, she had nesuin, and then she got divorced. Even though she's a katana, she's like a yisaima. Then she was mekadesh herself. La'achi avia dehavi kedushin boyimian. Now that kedushin will require mian, even though the father's here. Shol haylo lahamtin es hamtin as dasavia. Mian stagilu. Mian is enough. The ain masa katana klum because she's a katana still. So she got remarried. It's on her, not the father's around. Elam and rabbanon. The tikkun nisuin the katana she'ain lo av shel nogabo minig hefker. We allow a katana if there's no father to get remarried in this situation. So the reason why there's a case of mian is not that the father was alive and she did it without his consent, and he really had the reshus to be able to mekadosh her, to marry her off. He already did it once, and since he already did it once and she was divorced, so now the father has no koyach to be able to do it again, and therefore now she can marry herself off. She can be makabel Kiddushin because she's considered like Yisem Chayav, and therefore that's the reason why. But still, she can just do mian because it was only Kiddushin Rabbanan. So Masra Hamamnuna Ein Moichra L'Kroivim. So we say that a daughter, and this we saw before, cannot be sold to relatives because there has to be an element of yud, of being able to marry the master. And if it's not possible because they're relatives, there's no such to sell them. So it's actually a machlok. So we saw whether you can be moichel kroivim or not as we continue to mem hamad alf. But they all agree in the following case. You could sell an almana to a kohen gadol or a grusha chutza to a kohen hedget. Now, even though it's true that this is improper, this is a sinful marriage because it's a lav, says Rashi, Kiddushin Tyson b'chayv lavin. Technically, you could do yid. So even though it's a sinful marriage, the marriage will be chal, it will be typhus. But now we have to understand what happened over here. It says she's a widow, which means she was already married, her husband died, and now the father has a right to sell her as a mavriya, and even to a not to a relative, that's a machlokas, but to a kohen gadol. So how do we understand that? If the father was mekadosh her the first time, so he has no right to sell her. Once she was married, and then her husband died, he no longer has a halachic right to be able to sell her. That's it. He no longer has the authorization to do so. Elav the kaddish ihi. Nafsha must be, even though the father was there, she was makabel her kedushin, v'kakarli almana, and that she's still called a widow. So what do we see? Clearly that she's able to be makabel the kedushin herself, even without the father's consent, and therefore, how could you tell me that she doesn't need mian? She has nothing. You don't need anything. What do you mean you don't need anything? Clearly, there is something there. She's called an almana. We're not talking about a regular kedushin over here. We're talking about kedushin yud. When you sold her and the money was given originally for the sale, was that for kedushin or was it not for kedushin? And therefore the question is, does the other monies need to be given? But Rashi says, Kedushin Yud, she's almana be Kedushin Yud. She became a widow from Kedushin Yud. So she was sold originally as a slave. She couldn't have been married and then sold because you can't sell your daughter after she was already married off. So it must be she was sold originally as a slave and then married the Adai. So she actually, Yud took place. So it is a shivchus first, and then another shivchus, which we said, according to this one opinion, you can do shivchus achar shivchus, and that's the reason why it was allowed. So it has nothing to do with her being makabel. He sold her originally as a shivcha. So yid was done, and then her master died, or her husband died, so she became an almana, and then he sold her a second time, and shivchus achar shivchus is allowed. Question 3 we did not do. Let's see. TA 12 we did not do. TB 13. Niskach l'dasavia v'holcha b'dina siyam b'nises adkan.